Welcome back to the GreenLight Investor for the week ending May 20th, 2016. Our goal at the GreenLight Investor is to provide a unique resource to make managing your 401k choices both a simple and easy process. We do this with a simple worksheet that uses red, green, and yellow cells to help you decide when to buy, what to buy, and when to sell. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be taken as personal investment advice. The examples I'll be showing are exactly that. They're examples of how you can use this worksheet as an additional research tool to help you make and manage fund choices within your 401k. Please refer to your own investment policy to make certain that the choices you make are both appropriate for your investment time horizon, as well as your understanding and acceptance for taking on risk in financial markets. With that said, let's go ahead and get started on look at tonight's worksheet. On the left side, we always start out with the investment choices available to you, including your core funds, satellite funds, which are arranged with the more conservative at the top, which start with the money market, fixed income, U.S. growth, and fixed income. Then we go down to the U.S. equity, international equity funds, and the sector funds. Each of these, at the top of each of the columns, will show the fund number, the symbol, fund name, and a brief description of the fund. And each week we're going to show you the closing price of the fund if you track it on your own. We'll show you the month-to-date return, the quarter-to-date return, and finally the 2016 year-to-date return. The reason we update this each week is so that you can track on a week-over-week basis how your fund is doing against other funds that are available to you within each of the categories. And that way, if there's subtle changes, you can make them before they become apparent after 3 months of change on the quarter-over-quarter basis. So it's a nice way to keep track of the progress of all your funds and investments. As you can see, this year there's not been too much. Fixed income has slightly outperformed the equities. Equities are about flat for the year, with the U.S. equities up about just under 1%, and the international equities down about just under 1%. And finally, I'll show you one of the most unique parts of this worksheet, and that's the current weekly trends. This is a relative strength tool that's put into the worksheet each week, and there's only a few firms that do that. This is one of the unique parts of this worksheet. On the week-over-week basis, we'll show the relative strength change of each of the funds. When you see a bright red, that'll be the weaker funds for the week, and when you see a bright green, that'll be the stronger funds. And this last week, you can see that the money markets have basically done better than the bond funds or the equity funds. As we scroll down, we can see each of the different categories, which funds have performed the best by looking at the bright green lights, and which ones have been the weakest by looking at the bright red funds. And so it makes it pretty easy to take a look at how each of the funds are doing on a week-over-week basis. Just to the right of column V in column W, we'll show you the current weekly trend score and a numerical value for that. What that does is that lets you see on a week-over-week basis how the funds have performed. And it'll also let you see the current trends that are going on. When you see a lot of red, you'll see that that's basically a very negative characteristic for the fund. And when you see a lot of green, that's basically a more bullish or positive characteristic for the fund. When you see a couple of weeks of red, that means that the trend may be a sustainable trend, so you should be very cautious with that. And when you're seeing a couple of weeks of green, as we saw back here, there may be a sustainable trend, but no guarantees of that. Here we've seen a couple weeks of red, and that's been accelerating, so the trend has certainly been weakening. And you can go down to each of the funds and take a quick look at it and see how it's performing. Also, one of the really nice sections for this worksheet includes the long-term trend. Should always stay in the bullish or neutral trends in the long term, and generally want to stay away from the bearish trends. So this is a quick way to see how each of your funds is performing on a bullish or bearish trend. And again, that's a relative strength trend, but we'll let you know if your fund is going sideways to slightly higher or sideways to slightly lower by looking at whether it's bullish or bearish. With that said, let's see how we can use this information to manage fund choices within your 401k. To go to a different view on this worksheet, we'll go to the My Current Allocations, click Show, and down column H you can update this would be a manual update that you could do that reflects the actual choices in your 401k. To make changes in that 401k plan, you'll have to go to your company website, log in, update the changes, and then once they're updated, you can take that information and plug in your new funds that you have and the percentage you have allocated to those. It's a nice way to check the way you're allocated, and then you can check the performance of each of the funds. To do the review, you simply slide the worksheet over. Column R is usually a good place to start, but you can see how the performance is on a year-over-year basis. You can look at the long-term trend for the funds that you have and see how they're changing on a week-over-week basis. Here we can see we have a 10% allocation to the index funds, 5% to each of these two. We still have a long-term bullish and neutral trend for each of these. But what we've seen is this last week we've gone to a red light in there. So what this means is that we'll be watching this next week. If we see 2 weeks, we'll be likely changing out of these funds, going into a money market fund or another fund that is showing a green light with a long-term bullish trend. Our money market here, we'd like to have 10%, currently have 30% just because of the nature of this market. We've kept a little more cash. And in this hypothetical portfolio, we have a 5% allocation to fixed income. Because that's been outperforming, we're generally a little bit more. We have an extra 5% allocated. We're still looking at neutral, so that's okay. And we have 1 week on a negative trend. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and keep that. No changes needed. But we will watch and see if there's a change next week. If we see another strong trend down, we'll likely be moving out of that. Here we have a similar situation where we have 10% allocation, 5% to each of two funds. Funds are still in a bullish long-term trend, so that's positive. But the relative strength has weakened, so we're showing that there's a little bit of a negative bias to even these stronger funds in this market situation. So with the situation the way it is, we'll again watch next week, see if we see 2 more red lights, and then we'll make changes that are appropriate there. For the U.S. equities, we'd like to have 25% allocated. We currently have 20 in 2 different funds. This is still bullish, this is still bullish, but again, we've seen the red lights appear down column W, so we'll be cautious, and next week we'll make changes if that needs to be. We'd like to have 20% in the international funds. Currently have 0, and that's because we've seen a plethora of red lights here, as well as the long-term trend being primarily bearish to neutral, so we'll wait until we start to see some green lights there before we make any changes. Finally, we have 20% allocation, and that's set up between 2 funds. They're currently still bullish with green lights, but they are weakening. So if you're an aggressive investor, you might take a little bit off the table early here before it turns red. We're managing this in a very conservative way, so what we'll do is we'll maintain our view, see if these bounce back or if they do turn red. If we do see 2 weeks of red, followed or confirmed with the bearish signals out here in the long-term trend, we'll make changes. So this week, despite the choppiness in the market, there's really nothing to do. And that's a simple example of how we can use this worksheet to make choices and manage existing choices in your 401k plan. Let's go back to our home view. To do so, you can click with or without the performance. Let's go with the performance. Click show and we go back. And if you'd like additional information how you can manage your portfolio using or adding this system in addition to whatever fundamental research you do, you can contact me by email or go to our website. You can download this, and if you'd like to get an example of this, please let me know. That said, that's what I've got for this week. Thanks very much for joining me, and we'll look forward to going over this again in another week.